Hey guys, Ariel over here at Nyth. Today I want to do a quick video about sprouting. Now this is going to have to be put together over the course of several days so you guys can actually see the results. But as you probably know, I live in a really cold climate. There's snow on the ground outside right now, and it is wintry for about 8 months out of the year. And I try to grow as much of my own food as possible. Those two things are a very challenging combination. But one of the easiest things to do when it's cold outside, or you don't have ground, or you just have a little tiny apartment or a tiny house or whatever, is to grow your own sprouts. Now this can be done in any kind of space. I'm going to show you at least 2 different ways that I've grown them. It is something I do pretty much all winter long. Sprouts, if you are not familiar with them, are just a little baby plant that's just sprouted. You can sprout all kinds of different seeds, and for a lot of them you get a kind of insane amount of extra nutrients. Like some things have, when they're freshly sprouted, they're not a mature plant, they don't have any true leaves. If you've grown things come up with 2 little seed leaves, and then from there they grow the real leaves of whatever the plant is. So you're going to eat these before they get to any of that stage. They're just kind of the first little pair of leaves. And sometimes different vitamins, like B vitamins, can be 800 times higher in the little sprout than they are in just the seed. So that's exciting, because some of those things from fresh green plants are a little challenging to get if you don't have a place to grow them, or if it's cold outside and you can't be growing them, or all that kind of thing. So this is just a really easy thing you can do almost anywhere. I wouldn't think that it's really possible that anyone has so little space they couldn't do this. Now if you want them to turn green, you're going to have some kind of light, so you need a little window somewhere, but it doesn't have to be a lot. I usually put them in this window. This faces the back of my house. It faces north. It does not get any direct sunlight, but there's still enough light that comes in that they will grow. Now there's a couple things you can grow them in. The easiest is any kind of glass jar. For many years I did this with a piece of cheesecloth or any other kind of fabric that water will drain through over the top with a rubber band. Eventually your fabric gets nasty from pouring water through it a bunch of times. I'll show you that in a sec. And you throw it out and get a new one. That's fine. Then I got really fancy and upgraded to one of these little lids. It has threads, screws onto any regular mason jar, and has a kind of a sieve built in there so you can drain water through it. That's pretty handy too. Then I got really fancy and got this set of little trays. There's 4 of these guys. They stack up. There's holes in the bottom, and they drain water. And then there's a pan under the very bottom that catches the drips. Now the handy thing about little trays like this are, because all the sprouts as they're growing, which I'll show you here through the next week as they do, they grow more straight up or at a little bit of an angle if you don't give them a chance to turn around toward the window. And in a jar, because they kind of get shook up every time you flip it over to drain it out, they do grow more every which direction, which there's nothing wrong with. They taste just the same, they're not quite as neat and quite as handy. So these all work. I've done all of them. If you want to give it a try, certainly just start with a jar and a piece of fabric or something to cover it, and see if it's something you enjoy doing before you invest any money into it. Not that something like this is expensive. I think this set was like $14 or something along those lines. Now as far as what you can sprout all kinds of seeds. I got a whole bunch of different seed mixes to try, because most of my life I've just sprouted alfalfa seeds. That would be the same kind of alfalfa that's grown in fields for horses to eat. But the seeds are really tiny, and they make my favorite flavor of sprout to eat. You can sprout almost anything else. I have tried quite a few other combos, and they're fine. And there is different nutrients in each different kind of plant, of course, so I recommend eating a variety, but my favorite is still alfalfa seeds, and that is what I grow the most. Now this mix is broccoli and alfalfa and red clover. You can see those. That's all pretty little tiny seeds. And a mix like this has got some beans and lentils and sunflower and so on, but they're much bigger seeds. Now the one thing I've found with bigger seeds is that they sprout a little slower, they start slower, they grow a little slower, and every now and then they're a little more prone to molding as they grow. I'm not sure why, but I think it's maybe because of like the bigger seed hull. As the sprout comes out, you've got more of that hull there holding moisture, so they're a little more prone to growing mold. And that is occasionally a problem I've had with bigger seeds. and I live in a pretty dry climate. So if you're new to this, I would probably try a smaller seed, and even though I do try to grow a variety, I have found that I much prefer smaller seeds like alfalfas and clovers and all of those kinds of things more this size. They just seem to work better. So that is mostly what I grow, but we're going to try both. So when you're going to start seeds, you do want to buy one that is made for human consumption. Don't go down to the feed store and buy alfalfa that's made to be planted out in a field, because it's probably treated with all kinds of chemicals. You're not going to want to eat it. You want to get seeds that are organic or specifically intended for eating, not just for growing. Now, to get it started, you want to let the seeds soak just a little bit. So I'm going to do both these methods here. I'm going to use the rest of my bag of big seeds there and grow these in the jar. They don't look like a whole lot in there, but they start to grow. I was going to say double, that's not true. Their volume goes up by, I don't know, 100 times or something. So you don't want very many in there. Now, to get it started, I'm just going to put a tiny little bit of water in there, just enough to soak them, to get the seed to decide, oh, there's moisture here, I should decide to grow now. So I'm going to let it soak for just a couple hours, and then I'll come back and show you guys what I do with it later. So I'm going to set that there, and for my sprout tower here, because if I put water in any of these, it's going to drain, because it's made to do that with a little hole. So to start, I actually just use the bottom dish here that's made to catch the drips, and I'm going to put more in here because I've got the full volume of all 4 of my little layers to grow it on and get these soaking. So I've got, if I can tip that and show you without dumping them, got a lot more seeds in there, but it still doesn't look like a lot, but they're so little. That is still several thousands of seeds we're going to grow there. And again, just put a little bit of water in there, kind of shake it around to get the all wet. And I'm going to just let them sit there for a few hours. Now, this thing did come with a lid. It's only helpful for times when you're storing it. Like right now, I can put it on the rest of that to keep any kind of dust or whatever out. But when you're sprouting things, you don't ever want to put an airtight lid on, because they will mold for sure. So I don't use this when I'm sprouting. This has a lid on it, but it's that one with all the little holes in the screen, so that is not airtight. You don't ever want to seal off the air, or you will start to get mold on your sprouts. So my seeds are soaking. I put these away, and in a couple hours I'll come back and show you. These seeds will have soaked up a lot of the moisture. They'll have swollen up and gotten a lot bigger, and they will probably have turned the water a little yellow as some of the coating on the outside of a seed leaches out. So I'll show you that then. Okay guys, so it's about 4 hours after I put these seeds in to soak. In this top one with the little seeds, you can see how they've soaked up almost all the moisture, and the remaining water there is kind of yellow. And I don't know if the camera will show it, but some of those seeds, for one, they've swollen up to about twice the original size, but some of them, let's see if it'll work. There we go. You can see have actually split open and are starting to sprout, which is really exciting. That's one of the very fun things about doing sprouts compared to any other kind of gardening. You get to see results really fast. If I'd planted seeds in the dirt earlier today, if it was summer and all that, there's no way I'd be able to see that it was sprouting. And in my other jar, my bigger seed mix, they have also swollen up a lot. It's a little harder to see. So I'm going to drain the water out of both of these now. Okay, so I'm going to just pour excess water out of this one. This is exactly the same way I'm going to keep rinsing them every day as we go. Just drains right through the screen on the jar lid or the cloth that you've covered it with, whatever you choose to do. And there you go. Now often I'll let them just sit upside down here in my drain board for a little bit to make sure all the water droplets have come through, because if you let them sit and you've got a puddle here, you can get mold, like I was saying. But now from here on out, once or twice a day, I'm going to just rinse it with a little bit of fresh water, shake it around good, do the same thing, drain it out, and let it sit here. Now, I'm not worried about light at all until those start to get a little bigger, so I'll show that to you. I'm going to rinse these little guys, And because now I want to spread them around on my 4 trays here. Putting this lid out of the way because, like I said, I don't use that when I'm actually sprouting. I'm going to try to divide these up kind of evenly into 4 layers. Need a little bit of water to kind of wash them out of my starter tray here. There we go. All but there's a couple stuck in there yet. Okay, so now this is back to being my base, where it's just going to catch drips. So now you can see, if I hold it up there, there's little holes all the way around the edge, so the water is draining out of there. So this one I don't have to worry about at all. I can just stack them up here on my base, which will catch all of my drips. All 4 layers high. Again, I'm not worried at all about the amount of light they're getting until they start to sprout a little bit more. There we go. And they're just going to sit there. All the remaining water drops will drain into the bottom here, and so in the morning I can dump that and rinse them again with fresh water. And I'll rinse this again with fresh water. That's pretty well dripped out, so I can let that sit there as well. So now I've divided my original amount of little seeds by 4, so they're spread out kind of like that in the bottom of all 4 trays. There you go. And these guys, get them in some light. There we go. You can see how they've already swollen up a lot. So now everything's just going to sit here just like this, and I will show you what they look like tomorrow morning. Like I said, this is one of the funnest things to grow just because you can see so quickly what's changing about your seeds. Makes it a fun science experiment too if you got kids. Good morning, guys. This is the first morning after we started our little sprout seeds. Put them in water originally just about 2 o'clock yesterday. Then around 6, we drained that water off, and they've just been sitting here ever since. But you can see how they're getting that little curly tail sticking out. That is the seeds starting to grow. You can also see how much they've swollen up and kind of expanded the volume of the tray that they are occupying. And in our other jar here, those have swollen as well, but they are a little slower to sprout usually. Almost all the bigger seeds are slower to sprout than the small ones. So give them a rinse. And this is no big deal. The main thing is that you just don't want them to ever dry completely up, crunchy and hard, because the baby little plants will die. And you don't want them to sit in a lot of moisture because then they may be prone to mold. So the frequency with which you need to rinse them can vary a little bit depending on your house and your climate and how dry it is, all of that. As I said, with these jars, usually I'll end up letting it sit upside down for a little bit just to make sure all the water has dripped out. Now with these trays, I just put a little water in and just kind of slosh them around. Again, the water's dripping out the holes around the edge there. And then I try to let them sit so the seeds kind of spread out fairly evenly across the bottom of the pan instead of ending up in, a pile on one side, just so they all get a little more even amounts of air. Though it doesn't have to be perfect because in a couple hours, or tonight we're going to rinse it again, and so they'll move around again. So I'm just going to add a little bit of water to each tray here. Stack them back up. Give them all a nice shake. Gonna let them sit there in the sink and drain for just a minute. This is the color of the water that dripped through into the little bottom catchment thingy, which we're going to just pour down the drain. That is yellow just from some of the exterior parts of the seed soaking off, leaching off into the water. Okay guys, our second evening here, and look at how cool this is. See all those little white sprout tails coming off of the edges of the seeds? This little one, guys, he's really energetic. Check out how long that one is. So this is just over 24 hours from when we started these. I do find that the different trays will sprout a little differently, so I try to rotate them. But they're all sprouting, and even in this jar, this one's hard to get in the light. There you go. You can see some of our bigger seeds have pretty long tails going as well. So again, I'm just going to rinse all these with a little water, let them dry out again. Well, not the whole way out, but, you know, and repeat in the morning. But this is part of why growing sprouts is so fun and exciting, because you can actually see this growth happening so quickly. When you plant things in a garden outside, you do not see results in one day. Check back tomorrow. Okay guys, about 3 days in here on these sprouts. I did not rinse them yesterday at all, actually, because they seemed plenty moist. We had a really kind of humid day here. It was actually raining instead of snowing. But you can see how much they've grown now. And with our bigger guys, do something to get that to show up there. You can see through the glass, they're getting pretty long tails too. So I'm just going to rinse these all and let them keep growing. On a few of these, you're starting to be able to see some hints of green. I bet by tomorrow we will have some actual little leaves visible. Okay, now you guys can see how these little sprouts have picked their heads up. If I get on the side here, you can see how they're sticking up, getting green leaves. These would be perfectly fine to eat right now. You can also probably see how that one's a little greener than this tray, because the top trays will be getting a little more light. So I'm going to rotate them here. But they'd be perfectly fine to eat right now, or at any other point, but I usually let them go another day or two, so we're going to check in tomorrow again. But they have little leaves, and if you remember when I was telling you that these bigger seeds tend to grow slower, you can see they still just have kind of the white sprouts. Most of them do not have green leaves going on yet. There's a few in there, but they are just a little slower when you're growing the bigger stuff. So I'm going to give them all another rinse and check back in tomorrow. Okay guys, that is just how fast you can have sprouts ready to eat. Now it's not going to hurt these to grow a little more. You can see how they're not quite coming above the level of the pans. Not that that's any specific measure, but you know, they've got room to grow until they get over the top there. But they're close. Some of them are really close. But they're perfectly fine to eat right now. And now again, you're going to see how the smaller seeds grow a lot faster, because they're, you know, not mature, but, you know, kind of mature looking little sproutlings trying to hold their heads up and grow leaves. Whereas with the big ones, they are still very much, they're getting some leaves, but they're kind of tails and just not nearly as far along yet. Which is just, you know, again, I tend to like the smaller ones myself, but experiment with whatever you like. Everything sprouted is pretty much good. Now, another thing you can do when they're at this stage is when you're rinsing them, to try to rinse off some of the little seed caps that have now become loose as the sprout has grown. Let me show you what I do. Okay, so you can take it, you can do this with sprouts in a jar as well, but get some water in there, shake it just a little. This is going to knock them over, you know, from standing up perfectly straight, but that's fine. They'll stand back up. And just kind of swirl the water around to help loosen up the little loose hulls or husks. And then as I pour here, you can see a bunch of them just kind of float off. And they don't, you know, there's no specific reason you have to have none of them there, but it's just kind of nice sometimes to rinse the excess ones off so they're not stuck in your remaining sprouts. So there you go. Okay guys, last day on these sprouts. Now you've been seeing them as they've grown. All the little trays are pretty full. They're pretty, you know, close to, some of them are trying to come up over the top there. And these are all good to go. And now you can tell how green they are. They have gotten that green just sitting here at this window. As you remember, I mentioned it back at the start. This is the back window on my house. It does not ever get direct sunlight. So they have not gotten a lot of light, but just that indirect light is plenty to turn them that green. If you have more direct light, that's totally fine. But if you don't worry about it. They're going to get enough light at this age to turn green, even with very little. And if they're not real green, I don't think that would hurt anything either. You just have a little less chlorophyll in your diet. But now at this point, if I let them keep growing, they're going to start turning into more mature plants, which isn't what you really want. You can eat them all today. You can eat them over the next couple days. They don't grow that quickly. Or if you put them in some kind of container in the fridge, they'll keep, for a little while, the cooler temperatures kind of stop the growing process, so that'll just hold them at that temperature for, you know, a week or so. You can't keep them in there too long. Like most fresh veggies, they'll either wilt or mold, but you can use them for a little while. So I'm definitely going to eat through these in a hurry. They're tasty. You pull them out like that. You've got the little roots on the bottom, the little sprout heads up top. I think alfalfa sprouts are kind of a little bit sweet tasting of a green. I like them just plain. I eat them in salads. I eat them on top of soups. Make sandwiches with them. They're just good for all kinds of things. So hopefully that gets you guys inspired about a kind of gardening that you can do no matter what amount of space you have, no matter what the weather is doing outside. There's big fat snowflakes drifting down right now, and just a little way that you can grow some of your own greens at home, which is just amazing for your nutrition. It's fun, it's good for your budget, and if you've got kids, this is kind of a fun project because we're, you know, only a few days after starting these seeds and we've got a finished product we can eat. Now when you plant things in the garden, they are just, you know, probably going to be poking their heads up, which is really the stage these are at. You know, just starting to poke heads up above the ground right now. You're not going to be harvesting anything yet. So this is fun, it's fast. As soon as I eat one tray of these, like this morning, I'll probably start some more seeds in just one tray, so I kind of keep a rotating stock going and don't always have all 4 trays, you know, mature at the same time. You can do it in a jar. Oh, I forgot to show these guys. Again, the larger sprouts, or larger seeds to sprout are not my favorite, but they're good. They're just, I like the alfalfa ones better. And ones like this, I often use a little more in cooking, like putting them in a stir fry on top of a soup. They're just a little more chewy when you just eat them raw, like I just did the alfalfa sprouts. And this is alfalfa and red clover. I forget what all was in that mix, but there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not my personal preference. I like the little guys better. But try it all. There's all kinds of amazing seeds to sprout. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you've ever done this before, and maybe grow a little bit of your greens this winter. Thanks for watching, folks. If you're interested in more info on my off-grid tiny house life, check out some of my other videos here. And if you like what you're seeing, click the little picture of my house to subscribe, and then hit the little bell so YouTube actually notifies you every time there's a new video available. See y'all next time.